Today and in this video we're taking a look at a mod for Victoria 2 called Divergences of Darkness, and if you're in any way familiar with this channel you probably know that Victoria 2 is probably my most favorite game of all time, and one of the reasons for that is the great modability of the game, the ease of modding it. Basically go to the files, edit as text file and save it, and you can change the population of a nation or a province or whatever, and the wealth of mods that are available to it. And unlike the Historical Project mod, which is probably the most popular mod for Victoria 2, this mod diverges from real history and creates an alt history setting for you to play around with. So let's take a look at what this mod changes. And instantly on the map, the mod has changed quite a lot, and it goes from the premise of certain points in history where things didn't turn out the way it did in our timeline. For example, the Duke of Burgundy did not die in battle, and his lands were not split between France and either Austria or Spain. I know that they traded the land back and forth, but I don't remember which one inherited originally. And the 100 Years' War was not won by France, or maybe it was in the end anyway, because Paris is the capital and French are kind of the people in charge. So it could be the English won, and then the French side was more powerful, or had the most money, and nobility was French anyway, that, you know, the French side took over anyway. So they have the dual monarchy still, which is both England, and which had Ireland as well now, and France, which is a massive powerhouse. So just look at this is evil. This is the big blue blob and the damn perfidious English, all in one single evil country. Another thing would be the Kalmar Union was not, like, the Sweden did not gain independence, and the Kalmar Union remained and formed Scandinavia under the Danish, and Copenhagen is still the capital and everything like that. Aragon did not marry into Castile, and they did not unify into Spain. Instead, Castile conquered Portugal and formed Spain that way. Meanwhile, the Aragonese are still alive and independent and has their Italian holdings and have even expanded here in North Africa, all pretty. Navarra, which is the Basque, I guess, being a satellite of Aragon. So in that way, it reminds quite a bit of this, 1444 in EU4. Russia never unified, Muscovy and Novgorod being independent, and even Pskov is here, which is very odd to see. I mean, certain things like this is very odd to see in Victoria too, because, you're used to having a massive, big Russia here that is kind of a paper tiger. Ottoman Empire is actually a bit weaker than they are at the start of vanilla Victoria 2. And then we have other things that have changed as well. Those were the main ones from Europe anyway, and Venice existing, having Greece. So if you're playing as Venice, you probably have to deal with Greek nationalists and whatnot. An interesting fact is that in the HRE, what remains of it, a little part here, Bohemia, which is not German, is probably the biggest and strongest power, which is interesting because there's no real German states or powers to play as. So playing as, for example, Bavaria and Austria could be really fun and try to unify Germany, because you don't have Prussia or the Austrian Empire or a massive nation like that. You have to build it from scratch. So that's an interesting premise as well. In America, things have changed as a result. Vinland having been colonized by Scandinavia and gotten independence is up here in Canada and the Great Lakes region. Belgian Confederacy having been settled by Burgundy, and Plantagenets by France, and so on. And I think most of these new nations have a history you can look up. So there's some rich history and background depicting what happened from the point of divergence. China has been, you have the Qing Empire here and the Taiping Empire and the Regency of Nanjing and stuff like that. You even have something called Tungning, and Korea started a war with Japanese Empire, having been divided already. So it could be fun playing as Korea and trying to go for a resurgence. Two interesting things are, for example, here in Australia, you have Churao, and you also have over here in California, the Qingqiu something. I am really bad at these pronunciations. Both presumably settled by the Chinese. And interestingly enough, compared to China itself, all the Chinese states start out as uncivilized nations, but both the Churao and the Qingqiu are both civilized nations. So for some reason, their colonies have become more advanced than their home country. You can also play as the Maori, or the Maori, not the TV show Maori, but the people in New Zealand. They have their own nation, so you can play as them, which is a very, very interesting thing that you can do. They have a very small population, so you're probably struggling, but you can do that, and that's not something you can do in the vanilla Victoria 2. Everything, there's a bunch of more changes here. For example, in Africa you have Scandinavia having taken some more territory, including Maldives and things like that, and the dual monarchy have spread out. So there's like even Spain here. So there's a lot of things that have changed in South America, in the entire world. So you have a new playground to play around with, which is probably what should be enticing you the most to try out this mod. And I think that this mod is worth at least one try. And there are various nations you can play here. For example, Burgundy starts in a very interesting position, having the weak HRE to the right, or to the east, and to the west, the massive and indestructible the dual monarchy. So let's boot into the dual monarchy to see what they have available to them. I know there's a lot more events that you can play around with for certain nations. Not all of them have been fully developed, and I honestly don't know how long this mod will be in development for. Here, for example, we have the history of the dual monarchy. So if you want to learn what happened, you can do that. And you have, I mean, there's quite a bit of it as well. Just look here, there's a bunch of history. Interesting. Yeah, so don't worry, if you want to learn history of this, in this alt history world, you can do that. You can see the background of it. And what else have changed is a reasonable question to ask in considering this what this video is about. And one of the changes that have been made compared to, for example, Historical Project mod, which doesn't really change anything when it comes to the economy or the military, but changes just a few things when it comes to history, adding more flavor, balancing the mod or the vanilla game to be essentially Victoria 2 Plus. Honestly, at this point, playing without HPM is probably not recommended. Anyway, in this mod, it does a bit like the Pop Demand mod does and adds some new items. It also changes the icons for pretty much every single item, so they look like they're completely new while they're not. For example, Small Arms has a revolver instead of a rifle, so you could imagine that probably, is this revolvers that you need? No, it's just small arms. But certain things have been added, like gunpowder. We also have boots, for some reason, boots, and you have shoes, and sugar. Sugar was in the other one as well. Medicine, spices, print, top hats, no, that's just luxury clothes, and a few other things as well. You can have horses, you can make horses if you want. Probably has a horse factory, or glue factory maybe. Cigars and cigarettes, certain things that were not in the original game. And honestly, there's a problem with that as far as I am aware, at least the problem from the Pop Demand mod, being that the AI is pretty bad at utilizing these new resources and producing these new goods. Meaning that if you do them, you're probably the only one in the world, and the economy, like the economic game becomes kind of easy. And the AI is not very good at it at the best of times in just the standard game. So adding more goods could be a complete negative to some. So just aware that it exists, the adding of more. There's not too many, so there's not an exorbitant amount of things that have been added just for the sake of adding things. Most of them make sense in the economies, like when from the 1836 to 1936 time era. So I'm not opposed to them being added. It's more, can the AI handle it, and will it make the game a bit too easy? Another thing that has been changed is the armies. You have the standard units, of course, but you also had some tweaks. For example, you have regulars, you have irregulars, but you also have infantry. So infantry is a separate one from regulars. Regulars are the weaker version. No, wait, they are not actually. Regulars are the stronger version. So infantry only requires 3 of these revolvers, while the regulars need 4 revolvers and 4 hats, or I think that's just regular clothes. Meanwhile, the irregulars for some reason use timber, and I don't honestly know why. I don't know why timber. Why timber? I think there's cotton or something stupid like that in Victoria 2 proper. You also have a split in artillery. You have this regular artillery, but also mobile artillery, which is twice as fast and not, half as strong, but close to it. So you have to make a decision on whether you want to have a small, strong force that will have a great firepower, or if you want to have mobile artillery and catch up to them. And depending on your nation, you can utilize that in different strategies. For example, you can have a fast army that is just supposed to catch up to the enemy's armies and keep them down until your big guns can come into play, so you can catch up to them. When I was playing this the first time, I played at Vinland, and Vinland can maybe field one or two fully fledged armies. And I decided to go artillery. I wanted that firepower. And Vinland unfortunately ends up in a war with both the Belgian Confederacy and the Plantagenets at the same time, very early on. And I had my two armies with artillery running around and could never catch up to the enemy, because the enemy were too fast. So my big guns was useless. So if you're playing a country as Vinland, which doesn't have too many military capabilities, you may want to go with the faster force just so you can catch up. Because what the enemy did to me was they ran around me, they had more armies, so they just sieged me down and war exhaustion forced me to take a humiliating defeat and peace deal. So keep that in mind if you pick up this mod, that you may want to be going for the mobile forces instead. But as mentioned, there is some strategy that you can utilize with these new additions. For example, the aforementioned having a fast army lock down an army so your slower army can't catch up and make the decisive move. You also have light cavalry, which I assume replaced the hussars. So essentially the same thing as a hussar. And cuirassier and dragoon. Honestly, cuirassier, I never really liked cuirassiers, and I have no reason to change that. The other ones are more or less the same, unless there's some stat changes that could have been made. But honestly, I don't have a spreadsheet in front of me describing what all the units do, so I can't really be saying too much on that front. A major thing to keep in mind is that due to, for example, the Peace of Westphalia, which kind of established a world order of sorts, or is described as the dawn of modern diplomacy and whatnot, didn't really happen in this timeline. And neither did the whole Treaty of Vienna and the peace of, from the Napoleon part that established how the balance of the great powers that lasted until World War I and then World War II. Didn't really happen. So what happened here is that you have a lack of international code. And this is rather important because it allows you to go on a warpath really quickly. You will lose infamy rapidly as a result of this one. And it's not affected of, if you're at peace, you are in, Victoria 2 proper, you get rid of infamy much faster than if you're at war. The lack of international code doesn't really care whether you're at war or not. It will reduce your infamy very, very quickly. So make use of that one. So if you're playing, for example, Tehran, or you're playing a smaller nation, go to war a lot. Expand when you have the chance, because at one point or another, maybe earlier, maybe in a decade, maybe in 5, the international code will be written, the event will fire for it, and that one will be removed. So that's not there forever. It will be removed as, I don't know exactly what triggers it, but maybe just X amount of wars, or maybe a great war of sorts have fallen. I don't know. At some point, at least, it triggers. I don't know if it's at a set date or not. So those were the main ones, the main changes that have happened. You also have, it's a new ideology that will be adding prestige, and it will be, more that it will go from this one, and then it will have a new one that will start. And we'll see if I can find it. We have form the French Comté. Ah, that's pretty cool. We would like to do that. Yeah, and then state and government, and it will go up from there. So this will add pop consciousness, but will give a nice prestige boost, so you will have a reason to take it. And when you get this one, you will get another one and change up, and that will cause some upheaval in your society as the consciousness raises people awareness and causing them to be more politically active. I think that's pretty much it, and now I probably will, and I've been saying this for quite a while, I'll probably go start a playthrough playing as some of these nations. I've gotten some suggestions of playing Burgundy. So if you have any suggestions of what to play, then please leave that as well. I've been mentioning starting a playthrough in this mod for a long time now. I haven't really had the time, and have other playthroughs that have been going on, but I think that soon will be the time to really sit down and play through it properly. And hopefully I can make a good pick on what nation to play as. Anyway, if you're interested in this mod, and if this video has in any way sparked an interest to try it out on your own, you will find a link in the description below to get the mod. It's an easy download and it's an easy install, as like all mods are. And if you have any questions or problems, leave a comment below and I'll try to see if I can help you in any way along that path. So I think you will need the 3.04 beta patch on Steam if you want to play this mod. Maybe there's a version that will go with the regular one, the 3.03, but I'm not sure. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you around. Have a good one.